Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Barocco and I'm joined as ever by Steve Carroll. Evening, Steve.
Evening.
Well, we've got a couple of games to review since our last pod. I've got a feeling this one might not be quite as upbeat, Steve, as the ones we did last time out with Stuart James, of course, after the Cardiff game.
Only a feeling.
I'll be honest with you, I think I slept through most of the past two games, so that probably gives a bit of a taster of the quality on the show. 1 point picked up over the Easter weekend, Steve. It really flattered to deceive for a large part of both of those games.
Yeah, really disappointed. I mean, I know I've been probably very vocal in my belief, really, that we weren't going to go down and that the fixtures were going to play into our hands. Really not saying I thought that we were going to suddenly have an upturn and start picking up loads of points type of thing. But, I mean, obviously we've had a reasonable run up until, the Cardiff game then, and everyone's on a high, probably feeling the best they have all season. Then you're coming into these two games against teams that are, below us in the division. And I think understandably we were expecting a little bit better, weren't we? And, very disappointing points return, and the performances were not up to scratch either, really. So I think a bit like you, I'm feeling a bit frustrated tonight, and I almost don't want to talk about the Swans because they've annoyed me. But it is what it is, unfortunately, isn't it? But it was a frustrating Easter period for it, wasn't it? I think we were entitled to expect better, weren't we?
Well, for those listening who dragged themselves through 2 hours of us three chatting last time out, they can rest assured that's not going to happen this time. This is going to be the other end of the scale. Very little to discuss in terms of performance. It just wasn't there. It was flat, lethargic. Sheffield Wednesday first. That was the epitome of, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago where we were talking about the run of games getting easier. And I think I mentioned in that podcast the concern would be at the end of the season is when you actually want to be playing the mid-table teams, not the teams right at the bottom where they're scrapping. Sheffield Wednesday, for me, epitomised that concern because for every loose ball, everything, they were more fierce, they were more aggressive. They way overstepped the aggression point, but that's a separate issue we'll come on to in a bit. But they wanted it so much more than us. In the end, I think we were very lucky to come away from a point with that one.
Yeah, we were. I mean, it's to be fair to Sheffield Wednesday, I mean, and a general point about them. I remember when we beat them early in the season. I mean, I think after coming up to that second international break, they were on about 2 points, weren't they? So they were in a shocking position. So you have to say that since then, and particularly since I would say, around about Christmas, they've really picked up, and their form would be significantly better, I think, than a lot of the sides in the bottom half of the table in the second half of the season. So you'd have to think, even in the situation they're in now, they'll definitely be viewing it as 2 points dropped, that they must have a decent chance of staying up, which is quite remarkable, really, given how horrific they were at the beginning of the season. So, yeah, but we were poor, weren't we? I think it was a frustrating afternoon. They did get stuck into us a bit, but it felt as if almost, you wonder this through the two games, really. Do our lot think, we've beaten Cardiff now and we've pleased the fans, and, also the thing of thinking we're more or less safe. And they weren't really at it. But if you're not at it, you tend to get punished. And I think that's what happened, really. And we were lucky to get a draw up there. I mean, I was happy with the draw, and I would have taken it before the game, to be honest, just because it does just keep you ticking over. But we were frustrating, like passive, a bit lethargic, really, weren't we? And it was disappointing. I mean, as I've said in the previous point, really, I think we're entitled to have expected better. And it was a letdown, and the old cliche, I suppose, of after the Lord Mayor's show.
Yeah, I think that was it. And do you know what? The fact that we saw the Cardiff performance makes it even more stick in the throat of what we've seen since, because we know what these players are capable of. And do you know what? As a football fan, and I don't take this as Swansea-centric, as a football fan of any club, you can't control the quality that your club has. You can't control stuff like that. It depends on budget, it depends on your scouting and all that, and how well you recruit. But what you can control and what you can demand as an absolute minimum, Steve, is that players go out there and they leave it on the pitch and they give 100%. Effort is a bare minimum. That is the base level, and that goes from all levels of football down to Sunday League Park football, right the way up to the very top. And if you can't expect that, then you really are struggling. So when you see the performance at Cardiff, where the players fought for everything, challenged for everything, played with their hearts on their sleeves. And then you see the contrast that at Sheffield Wednesday, where we were standing, ball watching, not tracking runners, lazy. I have to say, a lot of it was just laziness. And we went in our shells. And that I find more disappointing than anything, because I think you can justify or excuse or understand any result in this division. It is the best division, the craziest division in Europe for me. But what you can't excuse or understand is a lack of effort. And we're not talking about seeing this happening. What, like you mentioned, Sheffield Wednesday there, the way they were back in September to the way they are in March is different. Swans, we're talking about a case over 10 days, 2 weeks. This is the same team. These are the same players. That is not the same level of effort.
Yeah, and that, like you said, that is the thing that is always very difficult to stomach, really. I mean, yes, we all want us to be up for the derby and everything like that. And it was great to see. But, I mean, you can't just pick and choose your games. This is your job. You've got to be at it. Most weeks, I accept that there'll be some weeks where your quality isn't as good as maybe previous weeks or anything like that. I mean, that's football. I think everybody, when they go to work, will have some days where they may be either more productive than others or just generally more... just better at what they do. But it's not acceptable when you look at people and you think that, you know, the commitment and desire isn't what it was the time before. And that, it's very difficult to forgive that, I think. It's got to be better. And I think I remember when we got around the last couple of years we were in the Prem, and that was the one thing that really stung for me. I mean, me and you will always talk about when we were at West Brom on that midweek when Bob Bradley was in charge. And Montero gave up on the ball, didn't we? I never looked at him the same way after it. I was just looking at him and said, you, my friend, have given up. That's not acceptable. So that because I don't have the ability that you've got, but I would never give up like that if I was playing for this club. And that's what really winds you up then, isn't it? And, you know, it's, look, as everyone listening can probably tell, but both of us are quite annoyed by that whole thing. And, yeah, it stings, doesn't it? But suppose we have to take the positive. We did manage to steal a draw from it. And, look, what else is there to say?
Well, really speaking, not a lot. You come away from that with a point and you think, take it and run, because, Sheffield Wednesday should have, in theory, been there for the taking. We didn't compete for anything, and that was, as we say, was the most disappointing. And they were bullying us and battering us all over the pitch, and it was a very, very weak ref. And I suspect some people will disagree with me, but I do like to see a leader on the pitch who will highlight that and make sure that they lead by that sort of example, where they make sure that your players are protected. It's the ref's job to do that. And if he's not doing it, I want my players to protect, make sure that the ref is aware of it. And you don't see it. Players just allow those constant bad decisions go against us time and time again. And that was frustrating to watch, the fact that, they got away with dirty foul after dirty foul. But ultimately, we came away from that thinking, take the point. It was a handball from Jamal Lowe as well. So we'll take the win on that one and run away with a point. But you're thinking then, well, you know what? It's a good point, Steve, because you're looking ahead then to Easter Monday and you're thinking, we'll win this one, 4 points out of 6. QPR in a whole heap of trouble as well themselves. And, you're happy days then. You take 4 from 6. Well, it was a bit of a continuation from where we left off for Hillsborough, really.
Yeah, it felt like that, didn't it? And let's be honest, the best thing about Monday by a country mile was that incredible home shirt, wasn't it? And it deserved so much more than another crap display, is the truth. So I think one thing that frustrated me on Monday really was the amount of time we crossed the ball into the box in the air. Now, we have spoken about this before. If we haven't got height, you're not going to win it in the air, so I don't know why we kept doing it. It's a waste. QPR would have been delighted with that. It's like, right, they head those balls out all day long, and they did in general. That was on the occasions where the crosses were good. There were plenty of them that were bloody awful and didn't need it because they were overhit or something like that. But we've got to change tack with that. It just seems silly, didn't it? I mean, Ronaldo is a good player. He's got pace, he's exciting, but that end product at times is not well, I think it proves why he's with us and he's not any higher at this point. So, that's just an example of it. That was what annoyed me the other day. Did you feel that if we were still there now, it's Wednesday night, for the record for anyone listening, that we still wouldn't have scored? Because that's certainly what it felt like to me.
We just didn't. Our tactics are all wrong. As you say, okay, you can say the end product from Ronaldo wasn't the best, and Josh Key for me as well really has struggled since coming back from injury. He wasn't at it again on the weekend. His crosses were overhit. He was getting beaten to the ball. He was caught out of position time and again, and I really felt like he struggled in most aspects. But even if you put a perfect ball in the box, you've still got to hope Jerry Yates wins a battle against a 6'4" centre half. It's not going to happen. It's just the tactic of putting balls in the air into the box is not going to work with Jerry Yates or Liam Cullen. And I said as such on Twitter, how bad must Kukurejevic be when a player who doesn't hold up the ball, can't beat a man, misses easy chances, doesn't compete for aerial challenges at all? And I'm saying this after one of Jerry Yates' better games for us, by the way, where he's more involved than he's been in months in an actual game. Yet, another player who would have suited that style, on paper at least, perfectly. You're going to put 50 balls in the box, put a 6'3" Ukrainian in there. Don't cross him in for Jerry Yates, who hasn't challenged for a header in 8 months. Liam Cullen will give you everything. He's a local lad. He wants to die for the shirt. But he is not going to win those balls. So what is the point? Tactically, it was all wrong. And I wanted to see us very early on in that game identify that issue and start attacking more centrally and start pushing players to run inside and then try and play the intricate pass through Pato and try and get it into the feet. For me, we lost that game when Joe Allen went off injured because the incisive mid balls through the middle of the midfield were dried up straight away when Jay Fulton came on. 2 performances from him, which has been, the last couple of months, to be honest with you, have been a bit of an eye-opener for myself. And I hold my hands up and say, I've defended Fulton, both between my friends and on this podcast before, and I'm really struggling. And it upsets me that he's got a contract till 2026, because I think now we've reached an impasse now where I do not know what he offers on a football pitch for Swansea City. He's not a hard man. He used to come across as a bit of a hard man. He's not that. He doesn't track runners. We've conceded so many goals where he's lost his man defending set pieces. He doesn't offer. He hides from the ball. He doesn't play the ball forward. And this is sounding like a Jay Fulton witch hunt. There's plenty of players that can also pull out whatever. But in my opinion, this is a massive fall from an average position to start with. We're looking at a situation, and we'll talk about this later on the podcast. When Joe Allen went off, my heart dropped, my stomach dropped, and I thought we were going to struggle here.
Well, look, I think it's no secret that I'm a big fan of Joe Allen, and look, I think him coming back into the team has coincided with our improvement. There's no two ways about it from my point of view. It's just that issue of fitness has been the problem, isn't it? When he's fit and he's in the team, look, he's more than good enough for us, and yeah, he's helped make a difference, isn't he? But yeah, I think Fulton has just been shown up for just being probably just quite average. I think that's the truth of it. There's levels, aren't there? I mean, Joe Allen is miles better in terms of his overall career, isn't he? It's just that now he's on the wing, but he's still, when fit, I mean, will make a far bigger difference to us in a positive way. So, yeah, I think it just sort of highlights, doesn't it? There's a few players here now that have got contracts for, beyond this season, and you're thinking it's going to be, are they going to fit in going forward? But what do we do because of the situation in terms of, do people want them? What's interesting with Fulton is that Russell Martin felt similarly about him, really, because he wasn't getting much of a look in, and then he managed to turn it around, didn't he, late last season, ended up with a new contract. The contract that he had would have been expiring about now, so then there's a chance, obviously, that maybe he would have been moving on otherwise, but obviously you'd think that's unlikely now, or certainly in terms of, he would have to fetch a fee, wouldn't he, if he was going to go? I don't know who would be interested if he was going to go, but look, it's just, it does bring that into sharp focus, and what, in the summer it's going to be another big rebuilding job, isn't it? And we know there's a few people out of contract. There's quite a few loans here, so that frees space up. But there's a lot of players here that probably we'd be looking to move on, and it's going to be difficult to find buyers for them. And also then, who are we going to be able to bring in what we want? And that's where you're looking at the sporting director and thinking, is he the man for the job? And my point of view is no. So that's what worries me there as well. Then so. It's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, Jay is going to be back in the team now, I would have thought. But, I mean, the other thing is it's quite damning on Patino, isn't it, who didn't get on at all again.
Patino, for me, I feel with him, again, there's a lack of... He doesn't do enough of the dirty work. And I've already left.
You do wonder the issues behind the scenes, don't you, with Patino? Because... I mean, he on ability he should be playing, but three managers now have not really played him a huge amount. I know Duff probably did more than anybody else, but that was mainly at the start, wasn't it? But even then, he was always bringing him off. And obviously, there's no secret that neither of us are Duff fans, but the fact is, you can't keep saying that every manager's wrong either. So Patino should really be quite insulted that he's not getting any sort of minutes at all, and should be working his backside off to try and get in there. But you wonder if he's just sort of thinks, oh well, I'm going back to Arsenal, so what?
That's the completely wrong attitude to have, and I'm not saying you're wrong. It possibly is the case, but it's that sort of attitude which will hold you back from ever achieving what you're able to achieve. And I hope that's not true, because ultimately he plays in Pato's position, and the big difference, well, is Pato better than him quality-wise? No, Pato wouldn't even claim that. The ceiling of Patino is a lot higher than Pato's, and he's got a long career to achieve it in as well. But what Pato will give you that Patino won't is that little bit of grit, you'll fight back for the ball and stuff. Patino, if the ball's past him, you'll watch him, you can watch him and focus on him. He'll just amble about. He won't chase, he won't track, he won't do anything for the team. And managers notice that. They go, oh, I've got these bloody heart rate monitors on and tracking their distance and then running yards and stuff. It's all data driven now, so you can't get away with it. And for him to come into this level and have potentially the idea that I'll be fine, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and stuff. It'll be his undoing, and it is damning that he doesn't get a look in and stuff like that. You talk about the summer signings and stuff like that. There's players, this club. I think I've been naive enough to think that we go into this summer now, we do this big rebuild we keep talking of for the second summer running, and Luke Williams will have all the tools he needs then to give us a big uplift next year. Now I look at the players who've got 2 or 3 years left on their deal, including some of the disaster signings of the summer and some renewals that should never have happened, which we've already talked about. And you think, well, actually, we're going to be hamstrung by those. Our budget's going to be eaten up by players we can't shift. Like, okay, let's say that's it for Kukurevich. He's gone. He's done for. We spent $2.5 million on him, didn't we? Where are we going to get that from? Jerry Yates, he's done. He's not going to work here. He's not good enough. He doesn't fit. He doesn't suit our system. $2.5 million on him. Where are we going to get that money back from? Ultimately, we're going to have to record massive losses or continue to play with players who don't suit the system. It's one or the other.
I think the happy medium gamble really is if you loan someone out, like say now we loaned out Yates, might go to somewhere else where he suits better, bangs in 15, and then someone's like looking at him. I suppose you could argue with Morgan Whittaker, a loan there sort of helped, and we did turn a profit on him, and obviously now that we believe there's a big sell on, could be likely to leave Plymouth, and then you've benefited that way. Now I'm not saying that could happen with some of these players, but I don't see a better scenario than that, if you know what I mean. Nobody's going to come in and buy them, are they, at this stage? That's obvious. So if you can't do that, if you loan someone out, they can go that way. But then again, if you loan them out and they do worse, then what? It's, you know what I mean? So there is another side of the coin as well. But what do you do with the fact that you could get backed into a corner where you really don't want these players? Kukurevich must be one, for example, because it's fairly obvious that we don't at all. So, it could then get to a bit like what happened with Jamal Lowe at Bournemouth, where it was obvious they were desperate to shift him under any circumstances because he was never, ever going to play. And then they've just loaned him to us on the deadline day. And I suppose that's what could maybe happen with one or two of them. Really, but no. Yates is a good example now. Let's say Blackpool go up. Could they maybe go $500,000, $1 million on him? Maybe at best. But that's what you're up against, isn't it? You are going to lose a lot of money on a lot of these players because they just haven't done the business for us.
It's damning, and the hangover for it will impact this summer's recruitment. We talked before we started recording actually about how nice it would be if every Swans player was out of contract in the summer, and we got to almost pick and choose from that which ones we wanted to offer new deals to, and then work on a clean slate of the rest. And you'd be excited then because you wouldn't have players who you don't want at the club picking up, £8,000, £9,000, £10,000 a week eating into your budget and stuff. And you're thinking, well, he's never even making the match day squad. So what are we going to do here? Nobody wants him. We can't loan him out because if we loan him out, there's only clubs that are interested in lower end League One. And if you're loaning a player that's worth $2.5 million out to lower end League One, then what's that say about his value? You're really running the risk of lowering the player's value yourself by what clubs you send them to. So unless you're going to have a club of a decent stature who wants to take him on that can prove that they're able to compete at a level, then, Whittaker, we were mid-championship and he went to top-end League One, did brilliantly at Plymouth and they ended up buying him. Great. We to be looking at play teams at least at that level, but...
Yeah, I suppose the other thing with Whittaker maybe is that as well, he's still on the young side. What is he now? About 23, 24 maybe? So then you've always got that resale value potential, whereas when you're buying people like Jerry Yates who are 26, he's probably 27 now, isn't he? I mean, that resale value is not really there. I mean, so that presents another problem then. So it's going to be tricky, I think, to shift quite a few of these players. Last summer's incredibly damaging, not just to what's happened this season now, but it could be to what's to come as well. I mean, you look at when we got relegated from the Prem, and we obviously were stuck with a lot of players that they took us down for a reason, that they weren't good enough. And then we were in a situation where we just had to get a lot of the wages off the books. So we were accepting poor deals for people, or some were going out on loan and all this type of thing. And it wasn't really until a couple of years in, probably the end of the parachute payments, which coincided with the likes of AU then being out of contract and stuff, that you could actually get onto a more realistic plan of what you wanted to do. But now we're in a similar boat, I think, almost, if we've overspent on crap. And it's going to be very difficult to put it right in one go. It's not even a case of if somebody puts a load of money in anymore, because financial fair play will stop you going as far as maybe you'd want to. So some harsh lessons need to have been learned from what happened in the summer. I hope they have been, but I have my doubts because the sporting director is still there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad reality. Sorry to dampen everyone's next season's enthusiasm to all of us who've renewed.
I think the Swans already did that with the last couple of games.
One talking point I want to bring in from the QPR defeat. You say the best part of it was the kits. Not many will argue with that. For me, the best part of it was QPR's number 12, who obviously won a raffle to become on the pitch and was still part of the winning team, which is the most damning part of our performance. The bloke couldn't run. He looked like he'd never seen a football before in his life. And he probably come out to the pub after 7 or 8 pints. Don't know who he is. Probably won't ever see him again. It was like Ali Dyer Mark II for me. But gave me a bit of a chuckle on the weekend, or on Monday at least.
Well, good on him. Look, I'd love to be playing football, and I can assure you that as you know, that will never happen at a professional level. And anyone that's ever seen me play will know the same thing. But this guy he's in there. He's had one more appearance than I've ever had.
Well, yeah, good luck to him.
The only time I've ever believed I could play for the Swans was after that second half against Brighton in the Prem. I know you hate that game getting mentioned, but yeah, that's the only time I've ever believed that my dream isn't quite dead yet, because we were so bad that I could not believe what I was seeing.
We could have brought Suzanne Eames on to take a free kick that day and we'd have had better luck, I'm sure. Such was the quality of our general play, but set pieces in particular.
The amount of unforced errors I saw was a sight to behold from a Premier League team.
we won't dwell on that. It just makes me angry thinking about it. Let's talk then Wales, because since we last spoke, Wales had their double header, which had to see them qualify for the playoff final and then win the playoff final. They did the first part, Steve, fairly comfortably in the end, scoreline wise, perhaps performance, showed some shoots of optimism as well with a energetic and dynamic front line. So naturally, when you're coming against a Polish side whose biggest weakness are having big lumps of centre halves who can barely move, you put a similar type of player up front against them. What an absolute moronic man Robert Page is.
But I'm just sick of saying it, really. I mean, the amount of time I have wanted that man sacked for is off the scale. I mean, I remember just that Denmark game in the Euros. It was 3 summers ago, and I was just watching him myself. This guy just tactically just isn't there. They made an adjustment, didn't they, of moving Christiansen, I think, into midfield. And we just didn't have a clue what we were doing. You're baffled by it. And obviously, I understand with the FAW, they're in a predicament with the manager where, obviously the person that was in the job couldn't manage for court case reasons, and so you have to have someone to mind the baby, so to speak. It's very difficult to know what to do in that situation. But the real problem that I've got then is that I think we were lucky to reach the World Cup. And I mean, last summer when Armenia are giving us a pasting at home, and then we've lost in Turkey. I mean, I don't understand how a manager could realistically survive that when you're a second seed and you expect to qualify. But obviously somehow we did. And then we've got to this stage and you're just thinking, okay, Finland wasn't bad. But like you say there, I've got a little bit of sympathy in terms of there had to be a change made because Brooks was ill, wasn't he? I mean, he came on as a sub, which was absolute lunacy. I can't defend that one. That was crazy.
You had Dan James, he could have put Dan James in.
Yes, that's what he should have done. He shouldn't have gone with more because, I thought Brennan Johnson, for example, was quite poor against Finland, even though he scored his first touch was terrible. But I did think he was playing fine against Finland. Poland. I wouldn't have taken him off. I thought that was a mistake, really. But then once he'd done that, you're in a bit of a situation then, really, where you can't really take Kiefer Moore off because you've got to leave a striker on. I mean, we've talked about Cullen already from a Swans point of view. I mean, there was no way that Cullen could have gone and played head-to-head against those centre-halves, was there, for example? So he sort of made a rod for his own back then by going down that route. So that was another mistake. I mean, Dan James coming on and then being forced to play at wing back, I should say. Just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if Connor Roberts is injured, fine, no problem. But what should have happened then was Jay De Silva, the Coventry left back, should have come on, and Nico Williams should have switched to the right wing back position, and then you've still got the same. But from my point of view, what I would have done then, if he was going to bring Brooks on, we should really have gone with 4 at the back. And
can we talk about David Brooks coming on, by the way, because that unbelievably bad decision.
Yeah, ridiculous.
How him and his medical team could possibly have thought a man they surely, if they don't know if he's got any running on him, let him find out, get him up and down the touchline, see how he feels doing sprints up and down the touchline. You bring him on the pitch, whatever, and then after about 40 seconds we were on the pitch, it was like, no, he's fucked, he can't do this. What an absolute awful decision that turned out to be.
Yeah, just scandalous, isn't it? I mean, how could you even think that that's the right move? And I mean, we can get on to certain other things of who was on the bench that obviously could have come on and didn't
happen as well, because
well, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to go in on Ramsey here, right? Because Ramsey, I'm convinced, right, he has played more minutes against the Swans this season than he has for Wales. That's absolutely staggering. I am convinced that man would not have played the game before the international break if it wasn't the Swans. And I honestly think the only way he was coming on in that Poland game is if they all changed into Swan shirts at half-time or full-time or something. Just absolutely scandalous. This is the captain we're talking about here, right? So if he's on the bench and then we're going to go to a penalty shootout, how on earth has he not come on the pitch? It's just absolutely staggering.
He played the game before the international break and he played the game after the international break. Yeah. Rob Page obviously felt like he couldn't bring him on for the international break. And then when quizzed about why Ramsey didn't come on, he said, well, he needed to leave a certain type of midfielder on the pitch. He couldn't bring Ramsey on and change the dynamic. The idea that we were in the 121st minute into the last few seconds of injury time, of extra time, and you're not going to then say to your players on the ball, whether it be Dan James or whoever's got the ball, say, kick it into the stands. We're making a sub. There's 20 seconds left of the game. Ramsey's coming on. Someone else is coming off for him because he is our penalty taker. Even if you think the dynamic of the team is going to shift, you do it in the last minute of injury. You see it time and time again. You make subs at the end of it, extra time for penalties. And the fact that he seemed to have what he thought was a legitimate excuse for not bringing Ramsey on, well, I'm sorry. Either Ramsey's shit out of that or the guy is, Rob Page is even more of a bigger idiot than I even thought beforehand.
The fact is, right, if he wasn't coming on in that situation, what situation was he coming on in? So basically, he should never ever have been on the bench if he wasn't fit. Like Ruben Colwell should have been on. I mean, he wasn't bad against the Swans, was he? When he did play the other week, I mean, he should have been on. He should have been on the bench instead, shouldn't he? If Ramsey wasn't up to it. But the problem is, because Ramsey came on and played 20 minutes against the Swans, that leaves me very sceptical then, because I'm not sure that he was fit, right? But I honestly think he only came on because it was against us. It's like, you look at it earlier in the season, right? Wales played Latvia, and Ramsey went off just after half-time, yet he played 90 against us on the Saturday then. I just can't help but think that, unfortunately, Ramsey, his main priority is actually the Swans. It seems a little bit stupid. Like, but how can that be the case when you're the Wales captain and you're aiming for a Euros?
So, Rob Page subbed him off to protect him, and he could play against the Swans. Very frank, Rob Page is a big head slapper himself. You know, he's been spotted in the Cardiff supporters, whatever, at the start of the season last year and stuff. He's Cardiff, and we got to put up with that now. Of course, we had years where we had Chris Coleman in charge. He never showed that sort of partisan rivalry. He united Wales like no manager before or since, really, in terms of the way he got us working as a unit together stronger. Was born with him and stuff and all that, and Speed and that before him. But you look at the way things are, and I feel like things are more divided than ever. Whether Ramsey himself didn't want to play, I don't know. And if he wasn't fit, I don't know. But there is no excuse not to bring him on, Steve, in the last seconds of injury time if he's a penalty taker.
It's just lunacy, isn't it? This is the thing. I mean, I've already discussed, Dan James going to wing back. I mean, what a waste. I mean, he could have been a real threat in that situation there. And, like, I think what annoyed me was, I'm not criticising anybody for this, right? I didn't see us winning on penalties. That's the truth. It was always going to be tough. You look at Szczesny, right? Big goalkeeper, plays for Juventus. Our goalkeeper can't get on Leicester's bench, right? I think you have to, at that point, think that he was more likely to make saves than ours was. So you're in a situation there where, well, what are we going to do then? You're thinking it's late in the game. There's about maybe 10 minutes of normal time left and obviously the potential of extra time. But you're thinking somebody has to win or lose this, or it's going to go to a shootout. I'm not saying you go gung-ho or anything like that, but I honestly would have been thinking, right, let's get James and Wilson wide, Brooks down the middle. I know Brooks wasn't right, so somebody else should have come on, maybe Broadhead or something like that, right? But you look at it like that and just go, right, come on, let's just have a bit of a go at these. And it's not me in hindsight because we've lost the penalty shootout, because like I say, I didn't think we were going to win one. But we should have just tried to ask them those few questions and just gone, right, well, we've got a bit of pace here now with Dan, let's use it, and let's see if we can hurt them. Let's see if we can get some joy with it, because, you know, at the end of the day, one team was going to miss out on the Euros, wasn't it? It was as simple as that. And unfortunately now, we may have gone out anyway, but I'm looking at that manager and thinking, we've already discussed it here now. Brooks should not have come on. He wasn't fit. Kiefer Moore probably shouldn't have started because that didn't suit us. Or then Johnson should probably have gone up front and Moore come off because Big asked him to play 2 hours. When Dan James has come on, then when we had the injury to Connor Roberts, he shouldn't have gone to wing back. And Ramsey, if he was on the bench, either should not have been on the bench if he wasn't fit, or should have come on to take a penalty. Now, look, that's about 4 or 5, I would say, sizable criticisms of this manager. It just shows a man who's completely out of his depth. He's in the job by default. Why the FAW haven't sacked him previously is beyond me. I know they said they still haven't. They backed him. So unfortunately now, I think I'm at the point where I don't really want to say anything more about Robert Page, because he isn't going to change my mind. It's very obvious what the situation is. So I think the people above him now are the people that need to hang their heads. At the end of the day now, this is going to be one of the greatest tournaments. I would say it's in Germany. Now, I don't think we would have done much there, but from a fan point of view now, we're missing out on a tournament that, from my point of view, we should have got to. We won 3 games in the group when we were a second seed, and then we got given that second chance, 2 home playoffs, and we still haven't made it. Now, it's not acceptable that we've not made it, because I've just highlighted there various points where we should have done better. So the likes of Noel Mooney and whoever else is making the decisions, they need to take a long, hard look at themselves, because as far as I'm concerned, my confidence in them is very low at this moment in time.
Look, if you asked any Wales fan going into the stadium for that Poland game, if they fancied their chances taking European stalwart nation like Poland into a penalty shootout, I'm sure 95% of the Wales support would have said no, thank you. No, this is a country that have been there, done that, and have faced those sorts of high pressure situations before. Our best chance of beating a team like Poland would be in the 90 minutes on the pitch with our exciting young. Talking of young, by the way, Rob Page's comments that we're a team in transition. What a load of fucking bollocks.
Don't get me started on that.
What a load of bollocks. I mean, most of that team has over 25, 30 caps. I mean, it's not.
This is the thing. Yes, obviously Bale has retired, as we know. It's a loss you can never fully replace, is it? Because he's the best player we've ever had, and he could live for another 100 years and never see another one. Joe Allen obviously is a big loss, but I mean, realistically, Jordan James has come into the team, right, and has done well, which is great. He's been a bit of a revelation, really. But I think he's the only one that's really come into the setup. All the other players have been in that setup a long time. Yes, the likes of Wilson, Brooks have been, on the bench probably more than they've started, and this has given them obviously the opportunity to get into the side. But I mean, they're good players in their own right, and I think between them I think what Wales have to do really now is become a team that's more greater than the sum of their parts, because we can't rely on that individual brilliance anymore. But I do think that a good manager would be able to do that. And unfortunately, it's not just the Page issue, right? Him individually, but we've got to look at the staff as well, right? I'm not knocking him. Alan Hill is at Sheffield United. Okay, that's a reasonable job to have, and he's worked at a lot of different clubs and stuff. But then Jack Lester's I think is one of the other ones. This is a man who took Chesterfield into the conference. Now, come on, this is not good enough for our national team. Now, people didn't like Ryan Giggs necessarily. I wasn't a big fan. But he brings in Albert Stuverberg with him, who's now Mikel Arteta's assistant at Arsenal. There are levels. Eric Ramsey was involved. He was with the Swans before. He was a coach at Man United, and he's now gone off to Minnesota. But I think Jack Lester replaced him, for example. Look, it's what comes with Page, isn't it? It's not just him individually, but he can't attract good staff, ones that are good enough. Whereas if you'd appointed someone decent, then maybe you would. I mean, Steve Cooper's available now, isn't he? I know we were never necessarily big fans of him with the Swans, but you have to think that if he wanted the job, then he would be a far better manager than Robert Page would. I mean, I think he'd probably suit international football. And look, I'm not his staff. I mean, he could bring Alan Tate with him, which would go down incredibly well in South East Wales, wouldn't it? Which would probably be the icing on the cake. But again, you've got to think that someone like Tate is surely far better than some of the other people that are there. It's just that, honestly, there's levels. Steve Cooper's managed for 3 seasons in the Championship, 1.5 in the Prem, right? Page has had, a couple in League Two, and plus the fact that his staff have done nothing as well. Look, I'm not being overly personal towards the manager here, but it's obvious, isn't it? There are levels, and he doesn't fit the criteria. He's not good enough.
Ending this point on a question probably controversial, Steve. Are we at all hung back on the fact that we still play this little old Wales, plucky Wales card, when in reality we were good enough on paper to qualify for this tournament? And maybe if we had a more "no, that's not good enough" attitude, we may have achieved more with a different manager, because we wouldn't have put up with what we've been seeing.
Well, yeah, I think the fans don't have that attitude anymore, unfortunately. I think it's the people in charge that have the attitude. I mean, I look at Turkey, right, and they beat us in the summer, but then I think they lost a friendly to maybe Japan it was, and they actually sacked the manager. And I was thinking, that's incredibly harsh, because they're in a great position to qualify. But then the person they brought in then, I think it was Vincenzo Montella, who's managed 300 games in Serie A. And you're just thinking to yourself, well, look, how realistically, him and Robert Page are chalk and cheese. And that's the thing, is like I said, the transition comments. It's desperation from a manager just trying to keep his job. But it's nonsense, though, isn't it? We have to think bigger now. We've made tournaments, right? And is it unrealistic for Wales, as a second seed in qualifying, to reach a tournament when the top 2 in qualifying go through, and then there's also those playoff places as well? No, it's not. Now, if it was the World Cup qualifying and we hadn't made it, I would have been all right with that, because I don't think we are in the top 16 teams in Europe. But are we in the top 24? In my opinion, we should be based on what we've got. So, yes, the attitude is poor. We should be thinking bigger now. We've got the mental hurdle of the first tournament was always going to be huge, wasn't it? Because there's been so many disappointments in the past. And Chris Coleman broke down the barrier, really. And after that, it was always going to be a little bit easier to qualify. And obviously, with the Euros having more places and stuff like that, inevitably it does get a little bit easier. The pressure isn't there, and you can afford the odd mistake, can't you? In terms of, we could have got away with the Armenia and Turkey thing because we'd beaten Croatia, and then you've got those 2 games, haven't you, at the end against the same opposition to put it right, which we didn't do. But we have to. The attitude should change. But I think the real damaging thing now is that ticket prices went up for this campaign. People are really annoyed at what's gone on. The Nations League games are not really going to inspire anybody, in my opinion. And I can see us still drifting. I think crowds are going to dwindle now. And a lot of the enthusiasm that has been built up over, a decade or so, really. I mean, Gary Speed started it, and then Coleman, after the initial wobble, which was understandable given the circumstances, took it to heights that probably nobody could ever have expected. And obviously it sort of carried on then through gigs, and then we did make the World Cup, yes, with Page, but I mean, realistically, we were a little bit lucky to get through, and Bale did what he does and got us through.
You talked to Chris Coleman there, and he mentioned earlier about some are greater than the sum of the parts. And yes, we had Bale and Ramsey and Allen and Williams and stuff, and we had some absolute top quality players in that team. But he also raised the levels of others. You had Joe Ledley, who I've never been a fan of in terms of footballing ability, real reliable number for Wales and stuff like that. And you had the likes of, obviously, Chris Gunter's had a long and decorated career for Wales, and took him to those sorts of heights as well. Even had like the likes of Jazz Richards, who perhaps didn't have quite as illustrious a career, but keeping Eden Hazard quiet for 95 minutes. You have an option where you've got a good manager who's got a tactical nous to kind of get that tune out to players. Listen, whether FAW can afford to sack him or not is another question. But if he's available and there is money available to attract him and he's interested, then please, come on, let's get on the phone to Steve Cooper and make the right decision, because the timing of backing Rob Page just after everyone was sickened by the penalty shootout defeat to Poland was probably made matters worse, to be honest with you, Steve, because everyone was still so angry about that coming out the day after and saying, Rob Page is the man, really didn't sit well.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's really disappointed, aren't they, that we won't be going to this tournament. But I did at least console myself, really, before the game. I was thinking, well, if we don't make it, he's going to get sacked. So it's like, obviously, the most important thing is to qualify. If it means he stays for longer than he should, then I will reluctantly have to accept it. But for us to not qualify and for him to still be there, I didn't see that coming at all. So that's, that feels like an extra kick in the teeth, and it just feels like it's going to set us back. I mean, as I've said, I do feel like I've said after this point now, I've said all I can really about Rob Page, because he isn't going to change my mind. He just isn't good enough. And I mean, one point we haven't mentioned yet is how he's, I had to side with Errol Bullitt over him because of the way that he was about Ramsey and just the general arsey attitude. I mean, you can't go winding up club managers like that. It's courteous to speak to them. I mean, it's obvious there was an issue with him and Russell Martin as well, wasn't it, before the World Cup over Joe Allen? And it's just silly, isn't it? I mean, I'm not going to change my mind. I've seen more than enough over a period of time to know that he's not up to it. And to be honest, it amazes me that the people in charge haven't seen it either. And I mean, to give him a 4-year deal was just ridiculous. No one was poaching him, were they?
Yeah, what's your opinion on his position?
Well, I think the impression I get is that Mooney doesn't like him very much. But I mean, does he have the power overall to sack? I mean, this is the interesting thing. But the problem is I've got with Mooney really is I went to a night in Newport last year, and Ellis James was interviewing him, and they were talking about the World Cup, and they were almost like saying, well, with Iran we did well, but we conceded 2 at the end, and against England it was 0-0 at half time. They were like being built as positives, but the reality is Iran battered us really, didn't they? And we were lucky that they didn't score on 2 until the end. And their England game, it was 0-0 at half time, but I mean, look, we were crap. I mean, don't lie to people. The fact is that, look, I went to the World Cup, obviously, and I know you didn't, but you would have watched the games just like I did. And it really didn't take a rocket scientist to work out that we were the worst team that qualified. Now, we might have beaten Qatar. I'll give us that one. But everybody else that qualified seemed to be better than us. We were just really poor, and there were so many poor decisions in it and stuff like that. I mean, you can't honestly think that we were unlucky against Iran. Like, we weren't. Like, they gave us a hiding. Like, we were 2-0 probably flattered us. And yeah, the goals were at the end. But how can a chief exec paint a picture like that that's false? I mean, that should set alarm bells ringing. And I suppose that explains, doesn't it, the fact that he is now still in the job even after this little debacle. So that's the problem that I've got. I wonder if these people are seeing things for what they really are here. And I think that they're not. And it's a big problem.
I wanted him sacked after Iran. I made that clear at the time, and I thought that was his time then. We're out, we're going home, let's get rid of manager, let's start a new fresh era. With Bale, coming to hang up his boots and stuff, and Ramsey winding down his stuff. Good chance now to, when you talk about the likes of Brennan Johnson obviously you mentioned the revelation of Jordan James, we couldn't possibly foreseen, but I thought it was a time then to just start afresh on a new campaign. It hasn't happened, it's still not happening, but we'll move on because there's only so much you can say about it. And let's look ahead, because the good news for all you lot is that we're not going to do a podcast next week because we've got 3 Swans games that we've got to look forward to. And I say look forward to with a big sense of irony, because at the moment there's not much to look forward to. First up, a trip to Middlesbrough, and that's coming up on Saturday. Then we got 2 home games then against 2 poor teams. Well, to be honest with you, it'll be 2 poor teams in both games because it's Swans Stoke and then Swans Rotherham. First up is Stoke on Wednesday and then Rotherham on Saturday. On an outset, Steve, from those 3 games, 4 points, 4 to 6 points. What are you thinking? 4 points, would that satisfy you?
Would 4 satisfy me? Well,
take it like my hand offered you.
Well, well, one of them's Rotherham, so to not get 3 points there. I mean,
honestly, it really depends how Middlesbrough and Stoke go.
Yeah, I think Rotherham has to be in isolation because you've got to be. If you don't win that, I mean, that's a shocking result. I mean, I know they did win on Easter Monday, but it's only 4th win all season. I mean, you're looking at it now and thinking we're not, if we were to lose every game, we probably would go down. So we still obviously need a win from somewhere. And I mean, I'm looking at that Rotherham game as the massive insurance policy if we carry on playing as we have over Easter.
You get a bit of Carvajal syndrome here, where, when we went down and he kept putting every game off because don't worry, we got Southampton. And then you get to that game and you're like, well, we really need to fucking win this now, and we didn't. And I'd hate to get to the point of Rotherham thinking, it's okay, we got Rotherham coming up, and we don't get anything from Middlesbrough and Stoke, and then end up get to the Rotherham game and they pull off a result, and then we're thinking, oh, we're in deep shit here.
Yeah, and the problem with that would be as well, there'd be 3 games left, I think, and obviously the next 2 would be away. So, yeah, look, we've got I want 6 points from these 3. That's the truth. And I suppose I'm looking at Stoke, and I suppose writing off Middlesbrough in that sense. I mean, we could get something in Middlesbrough. I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but I mean, I wouldn't take 4 points. I suppose I might take 5, but. Yeah, I mean, if you said to me we'll win 2 of the 3 and lose the other one, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll take that. But
it's safe, and that's pretty much all we can hope for from this season.
Yeah, I mean, you just want to get that last win, really. I think just to ensure that the worst isn't going to happen. It probably won't, will it? I mean, there's 6 games left. To think we won't get a win in one would be very poor. But you can't go thinking like that, though.
No, I get that, and that's where Carvajal point came in, but. It's not even so much for me the points, because the points, 7 points, you think, well, one more result. But it's the sheer number of teams between us and the relegation places as well. There has to be a lot of teams do better than us. It's not just a case of we're on 20th, and so there's only a couple of teams.
Yeah, but I suppose the problem would be, though, a lot of those teams are below us. So if they all beat you, it does obviously mean a lot of trouble. Saying weeks ago
is that the issue you've got is they do become 6-pointers against teams that are desperate to win. And when you see Sheffield Wednesday's, okay, it was aggressive, it was fierce, and it was over the top, but they wanted that win more than us, so we were very lucky to escape with a draw. We're going to be facing a few games like that, and are we up for that fight?
Yeah, I know that is the question. You've got to think that we will win at least one of the 6. Really, I mean, I'd like to think we'll, certainly should be targeting 9 points at home from the remaining games, and then see what we can get on the road. But I mean, after the other day, that my optimism on that certainly isn't what it should be or what I'd like it to be. But look, it's going to be Middlesbrough will be a tough one. I mean, it's a long old bloody way up there. I mean, I can't remember too many wins we've had up there. Like, it's not a especially happy underground, I don't think. But
we have that 4-3 with Craig Beattie.
Yeah, that sprung to mind. We did win, didn't we, under the lockdown? We won there 3-0. I suppose the problem is for me and you.
Yeah.
But our judgment is clouded by that miserable 1-0 a couple of years ago. The only time I've been there.
So let's not talk about that, please.
Yeah, but it was bad enough when they were at the game, and then we had some moron singing Adele on the train back to Newcastle to make it worse.
Also, Middlesbrough is the most grim place I've ever been in my life. Oh my God. What an awful
it's not great,
town.
Is it? So look, Middlesbrough are not a bad side, are they? They're certainly not as good as they were last year. I mean, I suppose the easy thing to say would be Barakpom was obviously did a lot for them last year in terms of goal scoring, and if you lose a goal scorer, it does get a bit harder. But I still think Michael Carrick is a good manager who, will get a bit more time, I'm sure. And and
they have the slimmest of playoff hopes. For me, it's too far for them. But if they
they're in the must-win every game stage pretty much, aren't they? If they're going to get in there, which I don't think they will. But they're a decent team, and I mean, to be fair, we didn't play that badly against them at home, did we? I'll say that for us. Sheehan was in charge at that point, and they won, didn't they? With that stupid it was a back pass, wasn't there? And obviously they've scored from that result in free kick, haven't they?
Yeah, we never score them, but how we let them just pass into the bottom corner, that's disgraceful. But yeah, I think so you're saying you'd snap my hand off for a point there, but not expecting anything, and you'd say you expect, because if we do lose at Middlesbrough, the pressure will then be turned up on midweek against Stoke, and I would think at that point I'd be more worried about Rotherham if we don't beat Stoke. We absolutely would need to treat Stoke as a must-win game then.
Yeah, I think so. For me, Stoke is must-win anyway, because 13 years in a row we've been playing them. I genuinely hate playing them. Our record against them isn't very good. Now, unfortunately, after they've beaten Hull at the weekend, my optimism of them going down has shrunk a bit. But I would bloody love them to go down.
We could help any sort of late plummet back down to the bottom of the league.
The other one that annoys me is the year of, I think it was actually the year of the lockdown, where, if you remember, we were top of the league, they were bottom, they hadn't won in about 15 or something, and they've come down here and won, and then we went up there and lost, and they did stay up by about that amount of points. So that was our golden chance. We could have shoved them down, out of the way, but we didn't. We did save them, which infuriates me, to be honest with you. But look. Nothing. I say nothing personal to Stoke. I think it is because they've had a few results against us and a few dodgy decisions down the years, and even the Kyle Norton falling over dive doesn't make up for it for me.
Do you remember the Halloween of horror we spent up there?
Oh yes, I do. Joe Allen set up Wilfred Boney, didn't he? I
got blocked by Leeds and Ian that night, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, I remember. Oh,
it was very much the case of this is what we've become. But we weren't to know then how much we would fall further. But there we go. Right, I end every podcast, Steve, with a question, which I can't believe the change in tones between the last podcast and this one. So I think everyone listening will be glad that we're not doing one next week, and we've got a few games to review when we do come back. But I ask you every time to come back with a sense of optimism, and we look forward going ahead. So finish this podcast with some positivity for us.
There are only 90 minutes of the season left. Only 3 at home.
End the season now. I'd love that. We're going to do that thing in League One where they just stopped the season because of lockdown. They just went, well, we'll do the points per game total and average it out. Just do that. Stop the season.
Yeah, I don't think too many would moan at that. I mean, I don't mean this in like a really harsh way or anything, but this has honestly been the most unenjoyable season since we nearly went out of the Football League. Honestly, if you were scratching your head for moments of real enjoyment, I mean, if you take out 2 weeks ago when we did a number on it, honestly, you're bloody struggling. And it feels as if there's not a huge amount of players that I'm hugely fussed on. I mean, if a lot of them left tomorrow, I wouldn't be bothered. It's just there is just a big disconnect, isn't there, at the moment? It feels. And look, I think a lot of people are feeling the same way. I'll be interested to see what the season ticket renewal numbers are. I'm not sure we'll actually find out, but there is just a lot of disillusionment around, I think, and it hasn't been an enjoyable season, has it?
No, but poor Swans make for fun jackcasts, don't they? Those are the ones that we just have a bitch and a moan for an hour and we just slag everyone off and get personal.
Well, we have to make the most of it this week because, like I say, next week, that midweek game means there won't be one.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I'm sure we'll have plenty more time between now and the end of the season to rip into how shit the Swans are and talk about how next season might be more of the same. Why are we looking ahead to next season thinking we're sure next season?
We just enjoy the summer. Oh, yeah, we can't enjoy the summer. Why? Because we're not going to Germany either.
Oh, my God. This is... give out the Samaritans hotline number now. Yeah, we'll have to wrap it up there. We've got, like I said, 3 games coming up over the next 8 or 9 days, so we won't be doing a podcast next week, but do join us the week after that where we'll be talking about them and looking ahead and hopefully talking about how the season is now effectively over for the Swans and we can look ahead to 2024-25. But for myself and Steve, thanks very much for listening. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.